This call is being recorded.
Welcome to Your Daily Writing Habit. If you are writing a book or thinking about it, or maybe you've started writing a book but you need some help getting it done, you are in the right place. Good morning, everyone. I'm your host, Christine Whitmarsh. If you're looking for me on the web, look for Christine Inc., I-N-K, like that stuff we write with. Each day I'm sharing with you the writing habits I've learned over my 21 years as a ghostwriter, book coach, and author. I have found that three things in particular have a huge impact on your success as an author, and they can even turn someone who barely sees themselves as a writer into a published book author. Those three things are writing fundamentals, productivity, and mindset habits. And once again, good morning, and here today on Your Daily Writing Habit to take us through an example of how she uses her Stanford-based quiz creation technology to tap into an individual's soul gifts and unearth their greatest value to their audience. How's that for a sentence? That I made up, by the way. Is my dear friend and client, Mellissa Seaman. Here's more about Mellissa. Mellissa Seaman is a business strategist, intuitive channel, world-renowned retreat leader, sought-after media speaker, and host of the Channel Your Genius podcast. A Stanford-educated former business lawyer, she is also an adopted EarthWisdom ceremonialist of the indigenous Tlish Diyan tradition, a potent energy healer, and a highly regarded professional intuitive. Mellissa bridges the worlds of business strategy and intuitive development to guide professional women in midlife to clarify their deepest purpose, do business with heart and ease, and step into a new level of leadership as what she calls wise women queens. Mellissa has guided her clients to $6 million windfalls, creating fun business quizzes that go viral, and new careers that integrate their intuitive gifts without losing respect, relationships, or revenue. You may know her as the lawyer shaman who empowers formerly corporate women in midlife to become professional wise women as respected spiritual guides, transformative teachers, and oracles of industry without losing respect, reputation, or revenue. But what you might not know about Mellissa is that she lives with a herd of goats that sometimes end up climbing onto the roof of her house. That's all. Mellissa.
Hi, Christine. This is so lovely to be here with you.
Yeah, it's strange that I'm only just having you on the show now. We've known each other forever, so I'm glad.
Right? Yeah, I know. We've been on a long road together of creative shenanigans.
Yes. Well, those are the best kind of shenanigans. That's good.
Agreed.
Yes. So how's the new year going for you so far?
So far, so good, man. It seems like it started with a slow, kind of sleepy, really, it's a new year kind of start, but now I'm feeling it start to pick up and feels light and kind of exciting. Even as a lot of things sort of hit the fan in our culture, I'm like, ooh, I've got my popcorn out. I'm like, ooh, we're gonna let's see where all this goes between, AI and so much happening politically and environmentally, and frankly, so many people kind of popping awake in their own intuitive wisdom in the face of all of it. And that's what I showed up for. So I'm digging it.
Yeah. I've noticed that with my book clients too, and potential book clients, people that are coming to me and they're like, all right, I'm finally ready to have the courage and expose my soul in a book. And I've been thinking about it, but yeah, the wake up thing, that really resonates with me.
Yeah, it's happening. It's happening.
So, well, let's start by connecting some dots. One of my favorite phrases, in case my audience of authors got stuck in your bio and they were all like, with the businessy and entrepreneur, and they were like, okay, hi, I'm an author. What? And you're an upcoming author yourself, so I know you've already connected those dots. So what do all your genius intuitive things have to do with people who are writing books?
Well, people who are writing books tend to be messengers. And messengers, that's one of the 5 soul gift types I talk about. You're either a creator, messenger, a transmitter, explorer. So I kind of have my own system that I categorize people in their deepest gifts. And people who want to write a book are often going to be a messenger type, which is my same type. And so I'm going to be bold and say, like you, messenger, listening to this, I dig words. I really, really dig the words, and I really love finding the words that accurately and enthusiastically describe your deepest gifts and therefore your deepest value. So a lot of the people that I work with are authors. Whether they've written their book yet is another question. That's why I'm sending them over to you. Because a lot of people now are authors, but they're authors on social media. They're authors in their own programs. They're authors of wonderful words that guide and inspire and connect with people, even if they haven't yet written their book. And for those people, even though they're so good at writing the words, the one thing that everyone seems to have the hardest time with is finding the words that describe their own damn selves in a way that really captures their value, their specialness, their deep gifts. And that's my jam. Like, I'm pretty savant at reading people very deeply as to what their deepest gift is, and then finding like the creative, sparky words that draw in their audience or their clients to really grok and feel them immediately and to value them highly. So that includes valuing their book highly in a world where we have so many books and so many online books and e-books and real books and all the books. How do you really stand apart? How do you really find the people who are going to really value what you've got and not just buy the book, but read the book, finish the book, digest the book, and follow the book's inclinations towards the other things that you might have as services or products or things that, will get them to spend more money than just buying the book. So that's my thing.
Yeah, and it's awesome. I mean, just becoming a fan of you as an author, that's not a given, as I point out to my authors all the time. Just because someone buys your book doesn't mean they're going to be your fan for life. So it sounds like you can kind of maybe help bridge that conversion with your quizzes here.
Yeah.
Not just like, oh, they bought your book and it went on a shelf. It's, they bought the book because the quiz brought them to your book, and it made them so darn excited about your book they couldn't wait to read it, and they couldn't wait to leave a 5-star review, and then they couldn't wait to tell their friends about it because they were already excited about your book from the quiz before they even bought your book. That's kind of what I'm
Right. Yes, and that's a big piece of what I teach. You're mentioning the quizzes because we've been talking about the quiz technique or the quiz, tool. And man, in a world where now everybody is so overwhelmed, distracted, busy, right? And oversaturated with so many marketing messages, and free gifts and free ebooks and free downloads and free cheat sheets. Like, none of us want any of that crap anymore. So it's a little trickier to market things, whether it's a service that you're providing or your book. It's a little bit trickier to get people's attention. And so what I've found is if you've got a quiz that is fun and engaging and really leads directly into like the juice underlying your book, into the system that you purport through your book, if you have a quiz that makes it all super accessible and fun and easy sounding, people will hit on that quiz. The quiz will even go viral because they'll share it with everybody they know because it's so fun to take the quiz. And then what you have is people who not only are giving you their emails, which is kind of what we think of as marketing, is like, we'll get their emails and then send them the emails about your book. But you actually have people that are opting in. So when I say quiz, I don't mean like the kind of quiz you have to take in school that you get like a 75% on and go home feeling like a C student. I'm talking about a personality quiz, like an archetype personality quiz. So this is one of those fun quizzes that you come across that says, what type of blank person are you? If you were a wizard, which wizard would you be? If there's a monster nipping at your heels, preventing you from going where you want to go, which monster is it? So it's these fun, engaging quizzes that you answer these 7 questions in 2 minutes, Not only is it going to be a fun time, but you're going to end up with some kind of reflection of who you really are that's going to be useful to you in your life. It's called an archetype quiz or a personality quiz. And man, it is like the best way to get new people to pay attention to what you're doing. And that includes your book.
Awesome. I'm trying to remember. I think was researcher one of yours in your quiz? I'm trying to remember what I was.
Yes. I think you were a messenger researcher. And so
I think researcher threw us for a loop. Yeah.
Secondary. Yeah, exactly. And so what does that tell us about you? Well, you're a messenger, which means you're a word person. Like, we know that because you're actually an incredibly genius word person. That's why we pay you money. And then in addition to that, you have an aspect of yourself that's researcher, and the researcher aspect, it means that you see things as they are. A researcher soul type person looks around at the world and goes, oh, I see what's happening here. And they don't have a big emotional charge about everything like some types do. They're actually trustworthy because they're not trying to tweak reality to fit what they think it should be like most of the other types do. Researchers are just like, oh, everybody, I see what's happening here. Let me show you. And we should really be listening more to our researcher type these days. And so there you go. Just taking my quiz really taught you something about yourself where you're like, on one hand, it's really validating to take a great quiz. And that's why people love them. You answered the question. You showed me that you're a messenger. But when you read it and it says, the one thing that you love is to make something that's hard to understand into something that's easily understood. It's like, yes, that is me. And then a great quiz will also tell you a little something that maybe you hadn't thought about before. Like the fact that messengers are also here to bring wisdom through that's sort of ineffable and mystical, and to make it understandable and like grokkable for people. And you go, oh yeah, I guess I kind of do that, And then you go deeper and you find out what your secondary soul gift is as a researcher, and you put those two together and you're like, okay, I really am like a natural teacher, trainer, empowerer, coach. Like, this is how these things work together, and it teaches you so much about yourself. Well, in the meantime, it connects you to my work, because just by telling you about those few soul gift types, you're listening and you're like, oh, Melissa's about what's happening under the surface. Like, Melissa's about identifying our deeper gifts. Oh, Melissa's about finding the secret value as to what your natural expertise is and why it's so valuable. And so just by talking about my quiz here, you're listening and you're like, oh, I think I know a little bit about Melissa's value. And so just imagine if you had a quiz that did that for your work, that everyone who took your cute little quiz was like, oh, I see what Christine's doing here. She's not just like a words person. She's also interested in my life journey as a transformative, like, a wisdom story, that other people can be inspired by. Oh, okay. And then of course, they want to read your book.
Of course. Well, yeah, let's do that. So let's pretend that I come to you, and because I know that this is one of the things that you do, is you help people design their amazing quizzes that are just, to all my authors out there listening, you're talking about building your email list. I know a lot of people are probably telling you got to build your list as an author. You got to build your list. So
totally.
This is it, y'all. This right? Is it. The numbers that Mellissa pulls in for these quizzes, it's ridiculous. So let's pretend that I do your program, and I want to create a quiz to promote my memoir, The Power of the Curve, something that many of my listeners are very familiar with me talking about. So how would we do that if I came to you and said, I want a quiz for Power of the Curve to get people to read my book?
Well, interestingly enough, a lot of people, when they first look at a memoir, they're like, oh, well, what does that have to do with me? And so if you've got a book that's part memoir, and we pretty much all do have books that are part memoir, because that's the story we're given, right, by life to tell. And so the challenge there is, how do you invite people into reading this memoir and finding themselves in the pages before they've even cracked the book open? And so in your case with Power of the Curve, and you've had quite a life, right? For those of us who've heard some of your story, who've read your book, we know you've had a couple different things. Like basically you've gone through death, you've gone through major surgery, you've come through like all kinds of challenges in your life. And you're a smart person and you're a super creative person, and dealing with the curves you've been handed has been part of how you've stepped into your wisdom. And so maybe you'd have a quiz that would be like, which sort of curve has life thrown you, or what's your curvy life victory, or which sort of we would come up with some title.
A big message of the book is like how to find strength in life's surprises, how to find power in your curves. So I don't know if we could make that like super fun somehow, like how do you find the lemons and turn them into lemonade, but something cooler than that.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, it could be even sort of a hero archetype quiz, because it's like you're the hero of your life just because you've survived what you've been through. So if you're a hero, which hero would you be? You could have that kind of some invitation basically that calls to your people. And here, before we'd even get started building the quiz or strategizing the quiz, I would also want to ask you, well, who do you really want to touch with this? Like, who are the types of people who are going to be interested or really find this book valuable, And can you think of like 3 types of people, for example, who are really drawn to this book, or who you really want to be drawn to this book?
Really interesting. I mean, just off the top of my head, I think of someone who is contemplating a new chapter of their life, whether it's, career-wise through retirement, or they want to take a big chance outside their comfort zone and do something cool, or maybe like divorce, they're facing the precipice of a new chapter and they're not really sure, how it's an upcoming life curve, and they're not really sure, how they're going to be able to handle that. So they're really nervous about that. So this can help them it'll inspire them through my story, but also help them assess their toolbox of like, well, it may seem like this is the first time this has ever happened in your life, but it probably isn't. So let's look at all the tools you've required from facing all the other curves in your life and pull together a super duper toolbox so you can do this awesome new, instead of scary new thing, this exciting new thing.
Okay, so let's call them the new chapter type. And then what would be another type that might be, find the book really useful, or someone that you really want to reach with it?
I don't even know if there's anybody else. It might be a whole thing of, and you can tell Mellissa and I are just completely brainstorming here. So this is what it's like to work with her. It might be a matter of breaking down the new chapter type into types of new chapter types. So, career or
it
personal.
It could be, but you know what?
Kind of thing.
I also think of someone who's been beaten down.
Yeah.
Who's a survivor and doesn't see themselves as a survivor.
Yeah.
Okay. I also think about someone who's like nervous, like looking forward and is scared of all the possible things that could go wrong. So they're scared of the future, and maybe they're not on a new chapter. Now, when you focus on new chapter types, what I really hear is those are the types of people that you end up working with quite often, and working with them, probably working on their book. They're oftentimes when people, when we're facing a whole new chapter, we're also wrapping up the last chapter. And that's a great time for people to write their book, because they're like, wow, I've reached the completion of something. I'm ready to move on to something new. Time to write my book. And so when I'm helping someone build a lead gen quiz like this, I'm listening not just for what are the types of people who could benefit from the book, but I'm also listening, and of these people, who do you want to stay in touch with because you want to charge them to do other work for them? Like you want to stay in touch with them because they really are going to end up staying in your community. So what I would recommend for a quiz for you is, let's lay out like 3 new chapter types, because those are people who also could end up being your clients in Christine Inc. And then let's look at a few types of people who are drawn to the power of the curve, but maybe they're not the person that is going to end up working with you in the book. That's okay. The quiz then becomes your pre-qualifier. Like as the people take the quiz, they basically tell you if they're your ideal client or not by just taking your quiz. And this is the strategy behind the quiz.
I was thinking about, and there's so many thoughts going through my head now. So, and then like the obvious one that I keep forgetting about is scoliosis survivors and family members, like moms of girls with scoliosis. And I've actually dads too, parents of teenagers with scoliosis really like my book as well. So anything to do with scoliosis. And then beyond that, really the chronic pain community per se, people that have had to deal with like chronic pain and like debilitating conditions in their life, they find as well another community for sure.
I love it. So as you can see, just having the conversation about what archetypes your people might be really gets you thinking about your business, and it really gets you thinking about your audience and the different segments of the audience for your book, whether it's complete or whether you're envisioning your book or whether, you're in process of writing the book, really considering who's going to be showing up in this book, like who's going to be showing up to read this book. And then of those people, who am I going to be drawing back? Because most of us writing books these days, we often have something else going on that we'd like to bring people into. You read my book and then you join my membership, or you read the book and then you become my client, or you read the book and then you join the movement or the community or the nonprofit or whatever it is that's like the ongoing service that we're providing that maybe the book is inviting people towards. So the quiz becomes not only a way to sell a lot more books, but it becomes a way to pre-qualify folks so not only are they going to buy the book, but they're actually a really good person to be inviting to work with me further. So in your case here, we've got like people who are starting a new chapter. So maybe like one of those is like a retirement or completion of their purpose or something, of one purpose chapter, right? Like a purpose chapter thing. And one of them might be a relationship completion person who's really changing, like maybe they're divorcing and they're like, whoa, I'm taking a whole new look at life, right? And then you've got scoliosis survivors who, that's a very specific category, and maybe that would become part of, maybe that would just be a health completion or new chapter, and scoliosis survivors would be part of that archetype, but not all of it. And then maybe you've got these survivors, and I would put the chronic pain people in there, because maybe they feel a little beaten down, because chronic pain is exhausting, right? And it tends to beat us down. And then maybe you've got some of the nervous folks who are scared about the future or looking for some hope. So there's 5 archetypes right there that you could create a quiz out of. And your quiz would be a multiple choice quiz, and usually it's no more than 10 questions. It's really short, but every good writer knows sometimes it's harder to write short than it is long. So that's why, some people hire me to write the quiz for them. Some people join my program where I guide them step by step through creating the quiz, because it has to work. Like, it has to be strategic. It has to do what you set it out to do in order for it to become like an automatic audience creation machine and a client pre-qualifying machine for you. It does a lot of work for marketing and sales when you set it up right.
The Stanford-based quiz technology that I made up, that phrase. And that just to let people know, like, you just think you're going to sit down and do a fun little quiz and it's going to have the results that Melissa's clients get. Well, good luck with that. She's got some science.
When you try and do it yourself. I mean, and you guys can tell the difference. There's a lot of quizzes out there on the internet that are kind of dumb. It's like, oh, what color are you? Or, what's your favorite color? Or if you were a body of water, which body of water would you be? And you take the quiz and you're like, why did I just waste my time on this?
Yeah, I can't get those 10 minutes back. There's no underlying purpose. Yeah, I totally get it. And I want to throw you a curveball now, because I want to make sure I represent a huge number of listeners that are listening to the sounds of our voices right now, which are fiction authors who historically they're challenged by coming up with quote unquote upsells and ways to create a tribe of readers that are loyal to them and love them. And of course, you see like really famous fiction authors don't have that problem, but indie fiction authors are always just like, yeah, I can see like, yeah, Christine's book, yeah, there's like all these things that she can help in coaching and da 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 da. But like, what do I do with my like fairy princess novel? So how would that, I mean, would this be a matter of like a quiz based on the characters in the book? Or I know this is kind of like a curveball that I'm throwing at you, but like fiction writers and your quiz.
I mean, think fiction writers already are using archetypes in the story. So yes, the characters in any fiction novel are going to be part archetype. And, you know, everyone knows when you pick up a fiction novel, you know, you're going to read the first 25, 50 pages and you're going to be waiting to care about somebody. Because if you don't care about the characters in the book, you're just going to put the book down and wander off. Like, who, you know, literally who cares? So yes, you could do a quiz where you identify like the archetypes that are represented by the main characters in your book and see, you know, and then get the quiz taker to already really connect with those archetypes or one of those archetypes, to really identify with one or more of those archetypes. And so before they've even cracked the book, before they've even bought the book, they already care about the story. They already see themselves as part of the story that you're selling. And so that's like, isn't that wonderful? You don't have to get them to buy the book, crack the book, read the book, get in 50 pages. Now they care. You want to get them to care so they buy the book. It's not enough that they just like care about you as the author, you know, like your Aunt Murgatroyd is going to buy the book. Well, that's great, but is she going to read it? Is she going to tell her friends about it? No, you know, not unless she falls in love with the characters, not unless she gets in there and she starts to care. And it's getting tougher and tougher because people are disappearing into Netflix. People are getting captured by the archetypes in other forms of media. And so as fiction writers, it is a challenge to get people to actually pick up the book or to put it on their Kindle and to read. You have to get them invested, and a quiz is a great way to get them invested.
Yeah, gives them a head start, so now you don't have to freak out about whether your first 10 pages are like the best 10 pages ever written in the history of novels, because they already like you and they already like the characters, so you can relax a little bit, you know. So
exactly.
Really cool.
Exactly.
And of course, you know, fiction authors, you guys need to have lists just as much as anybody else, especially if you're planning on writing more than one book and, you know, a trilogy and a series, and maybe you have like, you know, a community that you're trying to build around yourself as an author and your author brand and your characters. Well, a list is super helpful in doing all those things.
Absolutely. And, you know, a lot of the big publishing houses now, if you want to go in that route, they pretty much require that you've got 40 or 50,000 people on an email list if they're going to publish you. And so how do you get those people on a list? I don't know a better way than a quiz. We end up being asked as authors to go speak about our books. Well, that's cool. You go and speak, but how many of the people that you're speaking to, even on a podcast like this, are going to follow up? Like, how many of you, if I didn't have a cool quiz, which some of you are sitting there going, where do I take that quiz? I want to learn if I'm a messenger, a transmitter, you know, SlowGiftQuiz.com. You know what I'm saying? Like, when you have that, you say that, and it's way more likely that you as a listener are going to go take the quiz than if I was just like, my website's channelyourgenius.com. You're like, oh yeah, I'm definitely going to rush home and look up your website, lady. Like, we don't have time for that. It's the same when you're speaking on a podcast or even from a stage. However, when I speak from a stage, I determine that more than 90% of the people in the room go and take the quiz. 90%. Like, that's unheard of. So, like, somebody has me come speak at their stage because they're doing a conference. Well, I'm going to talk about the 5 soul gift types. Everyone's going to get curious, and I'm going to say, hey, right now, while I'm talking, go to soulgiftquiz.com, take the quiz. It takes 2 minutes. Don't worry, you can do it while I'm talking. It doesn't take a lot of bandwidth. And then in 2 minutes, I'm going to have you raise your hand, show me. We're going to see what soul gift types are represented in the room. Well, how many people are going to go do that on their phones? It's so easy. 90%. That's the answer. And the people who are interested in my work are going to give me their email address. There's actually a thing on the quiz. You can skip that part if you want to, because I don't really want your email address if you don't dig me. You know what I'm saying? And so just imagine if every time you went and gave a speaking engagement about your book, you had this quiz that would have everybody take the quiz. What does that mean? You have everybody's email and you know what type of person they are. That means you know what they're looking for. You know what emotionally connects with them. You know what they're longing for. You know what their story probably is. You know how to sell your book to them, quite frankly, and they're all on your list. It's freaking magical. I mean, it's so awesome.
There's jokes about how terrible as authors we are at talking about our books. I've seen more memes on Twitter and Facebook and everything about where you're just living in your book every day and you're writing it, and then some stranger's like, oh, what's your book about? And you just freeze and you're like, I don't know words now.
Well, there's this guy and he's nice, and then bad things happen, and then he's okay. It's really hard to sum up. And that's the same, I work with a lot of coaches, transformational coaches, healers, intuitives, personal service providers. And the work that they do is not easy to just sum up. And everybody's expecting you to be able to tell them the value of your deep work in 3 words or 3 minutes. And it's not really possible. And it's very terrifying and paralyzing and irritating. But if you have a quiz, you can just say, well, I actually created this really fun quiz. It takes 2 minutes to take it. And people who take it write me thank you notes because it's so cute. You want to take it? And then you'll understand my work. And they're like, whoa, really? Yeah, I want to do that. So much more intriguing and interesting and connective than I wrote a book. It's about blank, blankety blank. Here's why it's so important. You can't sum that crap up. It's better done in a conversational way. And that's what the quiz, because it's not just the quiz. I should be clear about that. It's not just they take your 7-question quiz and then you're all done. No, if they dig it, they give you their email and then you send them more emails about their type. And for us wordsmiths, it's so fun because if you know exactly the audience you're writing a letter to, then it's really fun to write them a letter. It's fun to say, oh, I know your type. Wow, you just went through, this big relationship completion. What a curve that threw you in your life. And you're probably wondering, am I lovable? Did I not even understand who I am and how to be in relationship? And, so I'm obviously using your pretend quiz as my example right now, Christine, but you can write them something personal because they told you through their quiz response what they're going through. And so it's you're already their buddy. You already know some stuff about them, and you can write them stuff that doesn't just sound like blah, blah, marketing, blah, blah. It's a deep and supportive conversation. It's compassionate and it's personal and it's a conversation. And that's how we learn. That's how people come to trust you as an author and as a professional. That's how people decide, okay, maybe it's worth buying this, $35 book because this person actually has made personal contact with me. I'm willing to take that risk and make that investment and spend my precious time reading the first 50 pages to see if I like it.
And I want to point out the opposite of the personalized emails that you're talking about is something like you're an author and you go to your author appearances and your trade shows and everything like that, and you collect your little email list, and then every week or every month you send an email. You should buy my book. You should buy my book. You should. Oh, by the way, did I tell you you should buy my book? Oh, my book's really awesome. By the way, I think you should buy my book.
Yeah.
Here, totally buy my book. Here's 10 reasons to buy my book.
Yeah.
Like, do we want to inundate people's inboxes with that?
Doesn't feel very good, but we don't know yet. We want to say, well, maybe you've been through a relationship change, or maybe you just retired, or maybe you've got scoliosis, or maybe you've got chronic pain, and you've lost them. Like, you're talking to everybody at once. You've lost them. That's not personal.
Pick your archetype, or for the fiction novelist, whichever, type of troll or dwarf or fairy princess. I don't know fantasy books, so it's really weird. It's when I try to speak to genres that I don't have understandings of, because I know there is writing a lot of things that have nothing to do with that genre. So you mentioned the program, and I'm sure that, so if they go to Soul Gift, everybody goes to soulgiftquiz.com. I'm sure at some point they'll get information if they want to do a quiz with you. It'll somehow show up.
Totally. Yeah, you can. That'll put you in direct contact if you take my quiz, enter your email. Not only will you get all this cool information that, inspired people like Christine, but like you can also just write me back, and you'll have contact with me if there's something that you're curious about. And then, if you're listening to this in January or February 2023, then I'm just getting my quiz program for 2023 going, and so I'm going to have a free 5-day challenge running February 13th to 18th, and then I'm going to be opening the doors to my 4-month quiz program where I'll help you create your quiz, or the VIP level where I'll write the damn thing for you, happening starting in March 2023. So yeah, it's a cool moment, and I usually do this once a year, but if you're listening to this at some other time, and you're curious, you can always just write me and ask me about the quiz situation, and I'll try and orient you. But it's there's a lot of people teaching lead gen quiz stuff. There's a guy, Ryan Levesque, who's teaching it. There's a couple of my teachers who are really great, but nobody's doing it like this. Nobody's doing it at this deep, archetypal, systemic, like super strategic way that really kind of replaces your marketing. Like, it replaces your front end marketing, and it ends your need to be constantly hustling for new readers, new audience members, new clients. And I just kind of go deeper with the whole thing than most of the people do who are, you can do a dumb quiz, you can do a superficial quiz, you can do a quiz that's like, are you interested in books about scoliosis? Yes or no? Like, that in my mind that's a bucket quiz, but it's not. There's nothing fun or deep about that. So, feel free to reach out if you're interested in any of that stuff.
Yeah, well, awesome. And there's a great message and lesson from this, because we just feel it, because we talked about a little bit on, you touched on how saturated the book market is, and I'm talking about that too. And it just sometimes must feel like, is it even worth writing a book? Like, do I even have readers out there? How am I going to find it? It just seems overwhelming, especially when you're at the beginning of the book writing process, which I know many of you listening are. But this is just kind of a reminder that, there's like a ton of people out there that want to read your book, but how you reach them, that can mean everything. So if you're just kind of like on Twitter waiting for them to find you, that's not as likely. Like, so you do have a ton of readers out there waiting for your book, and the quiz is not the only. I'm not saying like it has to be Melissa's way and no other way or whatever. Right. But the moral of the story is, put some work and some intention and a science, which is my favorite thing. And if you have the right method, you're going to find all of those readers. And if you're someone who's already published a book, and you're kind of like wondering, you're like, I've tried everything and nobody's reading my book. Well, it just might be a matter of kind of changing the method that you're using, and not just kind of, screaming at the whole world to buy your book. There's different ways of doing it.
Totally true. Totally true. Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah, there is one guy, Matt Browning, who's a well-known, best-selling author, do, and we worked on a quiz together for his work, and we got into the archetypes of his clients, and he had just written this book on like different ways that people find success, and different ways that people work with money. And we worked through the archetypes, and he was like, oh no. I'm like, what? He's like, I just learned more about what I should have written that book about. Like, Uh-oh.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I have a best-selling book, but I wish I could go back and add a couple of these archetypes that I wasn't even thinking about. And I'm like, yeah, I get that a lot. Like when you go through and you work through the process of creating an archetype quiz, you end up understanding your own work better than you ever have before. And that can really influence how you create the system and how you write your book. So it's chicken and the egg a little bit around here. But I would just say, even if you haven't yet started with your book or you're just getting started, creating the quiz system can not only build the list before you publish the book, but it can also really help you understand your own work at a deeper level that will help you write a better book.
Great point. And that's something that, I'm very committed to helping people with. And it's a heck of a life being deeply creative people like you and everybody listening to the sound of our voices, because if you're listening to a show called Your Daily Writing Habit, where you're sitting here like, I want to write every day, clearly you're committed to the deeper processes of life. So isn't it a fun life that we live? It's crazy. Totally. So, I have to ask you, because it's Your Daily Writing Habit, as I just said. So what's your favorite habit?
My favorite habit? My favorite habit is I pre-program my day before I get out of bed. So I like lazy things. Like, I'm a very spiritual person, but I like super lazy, effective spirituality. So I have this practice that I call the Big Pig, which is BIGPIG, and it's my morning practice. I do it before I even get out of bed. So B is for breathe. I just take a few breaths laying there in bed. I is for invocation. I call in all my invisible help, my angels, my guides, whatever you want to call that. G is for gratitude. I flood myself with gratitude, thinking about all the things I'm grateful for. And then P is for pre-program my day. So I think about, I'm all flooded with gratitude and breath and stuff, and then I think about my day, everything that's going to happen in my day that day, and I think about it going the best way possible. And I just pre-program it to go awesome. And I pre-program there's going to be great surprises and I'm going to feel so good. And that's my pre-program my day thing. And then intention, which is the I in pig, I just set a one-word intention for the day, like relaxed or something. And then G, I end with gratitude. And that is my favorite habit ever, because it pre-programs my day. It starts me off on the right foot. And it's the laziest dang morning practice I have ever heard of. Big Pig.
Sounds like the exact opposite of getting up at 5 a.m. and dumping yourself in a freezing cold pool or whatever this other stuff.
It is. It is exactly the opposite of all that stuff, which I'm sure also works. But laying around, I just love laying around.
Yeah, I really like that. Well, this is awesome. And then next time I'll have you back because I know you're writing a book, so we'll talk about that. And I don't know. I have a suspicion that there will be a quiz attached to your future book. So
yes, thanks. Yeah, totes. Totally.
All right, so everybody check the show notes. But it's just the easiest to remember website, soulgiftquiz.com, and I talked about my book, powerofthecurve.com, a million times. But it's all in the show notes. Well, thank you, Mellissa. This has been amazing.
Oh, thanks, Christine. I adore you, and your support has been so instrumental in my success and so wonderful to create the book with you. I send everybody that I know and love to you, because you are also just such a savant genius with helping us find the words that create our full expression in our book. So thanks for doing what you're doing.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. And I love your book. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of all my clients. It's awesome. And thank you all for joining us here on Your Daily Writing Habit, where I am helping you write and finish writing an awesome book. Please drop by my Inc. Authors group on Facebook to connect with other authors like yourselves and valuable publishing resources, really anything you need related to writing a book. Inc. Authors on Facebook. Hey, that link's in the show notes with 7,000 other links. So always check the show notes. Until tomorrow, happy writing.